Hey there, and welcome back to the Attract and Standout podcast. I'm your host, Darlene Hawley. And around here, we're all about helping heart-centered entrepreneurs and executive leaders speak up, stand tall, and share their message with confidence and clarity. Because when you communicate clearly, you connect deeper, you lead stronger, and you build a business that truly thrives. Whether I'm coaching one-on-one or leading interactive workshops, I love giving women the tools to engage their people, build trust, and make real impact. Curious about working together? Head over to darlenehawley.com/work with me to learn more. All right, let's dive into another episode. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Attract and Standout podcast. I am so excited for today, as I always am, because I love having conversations with amazing women who are doing super cool things all around the world. And I have with me today Dr. Shradda Shah.
Yes,
And
yes.
I think I said it proper. I hope so. Dr. Shradha, I'm so excited to have you here with us today. I know that you are known for your rare sensitivity and flair for connecting with people, and deep connection is so important in making sure that we take care of ourselves. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Darlene.
So before we dive too far in, I love to hear stories, and I would love to hear your story. Could you take us back a little bit and let us know how you came to the work that you're doing today and making the impacts that you are today as well?
Yes, of course. Thank you for this question. So I began working maybe 18 years ago when I started my private practice, and I was based in India back then. Before that, of course, we went through a very rigorous training, medical training in India. Today I'm practicing only with homeopathy, and I work with the special needs population to a large extent. I also work with autoimmune conditions because these are conditions that require a lot of additional support to what is usually available in most countries. So for a short while I was in the UK, and now I've returned back to India. But my main inspiration remains my patients, and largely the children and even the special needs kids who come in. I think they are my main inspiration.
Hmm, I love that. As a woman who has learned to live with what I call an invisible autoimmune disease over the past, gosh, now it's been 26 years, I think, since I was diagnosed with it. I really appreciate the work that you're doing because it's something that's constant. It's always there. It's something that we deal with on a daily basis. And I know so many people need so much support when it comes to taking care of themselves and making sure that they can show up and be their most authentic self and still do all the things, right? Like I'm a mom of four. I haven't been able to slow down. I haven't been able to stop. And it's important that, we take care of ourselves so that we
Yes.
can be there and support the people that we care so much about, make an impact in the world, support the community. I know that especially women, when we have the ability to run businesses and to be executives inside of organizations and do really big work, like it impacts the whole community in such a beautiful way. So I thank you for taking care of people in this beautiful way. What are some of the ways that you really support them? Tell us a little bit, like what's a typical day look like for you, and how do you support your clients?
So I have a team. I have somebody who manages the clinic, for example. I have two receptionists. I have had three or four assistants as well over the years. I have somebody who helps me with the tech side of things, who's also a medic, because it's a little difficult to coordinate everything together. So as a result of this, what we have come up with now, the latest initiative that I'm working on is an inner child webinar, which is an on-demand multi-session webinar. So the idea behind is that it can be self-paced. You just sign up for it, and you can do the work at your own pace. And most people that have signed up for it have been people who have been working on themselves. They've been to a therapist. They've been to all sorts of support systems, but somewhere something is lost. Some people sometimes fall through the cracks, and because we work on a very strong mind body health kind of platform, it helps a lot of the people that we work with, our clinic works with, and then they refer the same program to their teams or their organizations, and then all their employees can also benefit from it. it's not a substitute for treatment in any way for either mental or physical, but it's a self-help tool that can help you to take the next step more easily,
Yeah.
to give you that strength to take the next step more easily. And of course, everyone who does participates in our seminars and workshops. There are many of them. There are many, many modules. They all, if they feel like connecting back with us, like a big corporate team, like I'd worked with Marsh McLennan recently, and if they want to connect back with us, then they join my book club, which is completely accessible to everyone. There is no fee over there. And then that gives them a community to connect with other parents, other mothers, other people who are in recovery from various problems. So it's been a very interesting journey because we've tried to bring together healing, uh, medicine, recovery, narratives, art, children, and literature also because of the book club. So we've tried to bring it all together, and we often use children's literature as a way to connect because mothers or parents with young children don't always have the time to read very large books, right?
Mhm.
So we
Yeah.
actually choose books that are less than 500 words but have a very deep message.
Mhm.
So, for example, if we have the time, I'd like to share that we on our first book club meeting, which was in 2021, in the middle of the pandemic, we all wanted to connect via Zoom, and everyone was grieving something or the other. I had just returned from the hospital myself, uh, from being on life support because I was working through that time, and the Delta wave, which was the second wave, was the most lethal one. However, when I wanted to get back to work very, very slowly, I found that books was it was what I wanted to use to connect to my to the folks that I knew all these years. So we started with books under 500 words, and the first book was called A Very Late Story. And it's a beautiful book. It's about these children. There are illustrations. There are these different characters who are all children, like a child rabbit and a child and children animals who are in it. And they've all gotten together because someone has told them that the story is going to start. And then they turn the page and they are still waiting for the story to start. And then there is the next page, and the story still hasn't started. And then they begin to do all sorts of other things while the story begins. And that's what the story is, that they know that they're inside the book and they're waiting for the story to start. And by the end of the book, they realize all of them in different ways that they were the story.
Mhm.
And the story has started, the story has realized itself through them.
Yeah.
And it's such a beautiful book. It's such a beautiful message. The illustrations are wonderful. And there is no human being who cannot connect to something like this, you know? And it was such a beautiful session for all of us. And so on and so forth. So we've started, after that, we used another book which is called The Dot, and it's about this child who has been taught how to only color in a certain way, but how a single dot or a single blob of paint can look like so many different things to different people. So that's another really beautiful children's book that I love.
I love I
Um,
love I love the first story you were talking about. It made me think like how often in life we keep waiting for like what's the next chapter going to look like? When's our life going to begin? What are we going to do next? And so often we're so focused on like what's coming or what we're looking for that we never really sit in the muck of where we're at maybe even today and learn those lessons and really identify like this is part of my life even if it's not like super glorious right now or if it's maybe a little bit rough and it's feeling hard, but those are all pieces that are, character builders and strength building and really allowing us to show up and shine and be who we truly are versus waiting and, waiting for that next thing, waiting for that next person to come into our life. Or, sometimes I feel like as a mom, even like I have two older boys and I have two at home still. And sometimes I'm like, I feel like I'm defined in ways by the activities I do because of how much, I'm involved in my kid's life and like really making sure that I feel like over the past probably like 5 years even, I've really like worked on how do I make sure I'm taking care of me first, identifying what I want, making sure that I'm filling my cup so that I can be even a better parent and business owner and different things like that. So I love the idea of that. I think it's so important because we forget like we're a living story, even if it's not super, fancy today. It's still part of our story. It's still part of who we are, and it's still part of the process and journey.
The thing about art and writing, some of the best art or even some of the best children's books have come up at a time when there was a lot of chaos.
Hmm.
That is the ironical part. Having said that, it would also be nice if it came out of a sense of peace,
Yes.
so that's a double-edged sword sometimes, that most artists, most writers, they write the best when they are in the middle of all this chaos. So I wish that maybe we can, one bit at a time, we can bring some balance back together. It may not be perfect, but it may be a little more than what it was yesterday.
Well, I think so much a part of that is we think of like the transition. So when we're sharing stories, oftentimes even because I talk a lot with my clients, as the entrepreneurs and even the executives, whether you're doing a sales pitch or you're writing content for your website or you're just sharing stories from a stage, like oftentimes we're thinking like, oh, I used to be here and I transitioned and I had this major shift, like this life thing happened, and now look at me, I'm over here in this other spot. And those are great stories, but we forget like the other parts to it and how it doesn't always have to be a huge transition. It could be something simple. Like I was out walking the dog today and I stopped and smelled the roses and I noticed like living in the moment can be powerful.
Yes, yes. And having these conversations, right? Having these conversations about the little things, because there's so much that is out on show. I was speaking to someone yesterday, and she asked me, "What do you want me to do for you? What do you want me to help you with this webinar that we are doing?" I said, "I don't want to show the impact. I want to make the impact. So you please help me with whatever tools I need from technology to do this." Because all the questions that she was asking me were about showing the impact. I said, "We'll, worry about that later. Right now, let's just worry about making the impact, and measuring it and understanding it. So sometimes we don't have the time to understand the impact that we're already making.
Yeah.
That's my concern.
So good. When
Mm.
when you think about the work that you're doing and how you're showing up and showing them how to make the impact, not just or not showing them, but like actually getting them to make the impact, what have been some of like the behind the scenes for you that have really like stretched you and helped you grow as an entrepreneur, as a teacher? Like what have been some of those stories where you've really been able to identify some big moments that have led to bigger things for you?
So I think all the big moments come from the kids. There's no other way of putting it. For example, there was this one child, I remember, she is now in university and all that. She's grown up. But when she was 8 or 9 years old, she would keep running out of her medicines 2 weeks before the due date. And 2 weeks is a lot of time.
Yeah.
So the first time I asked the parent, and the parent said that she's dropped the medicine. So we sent a new wire. The second time, I again asked the parent, and the parent said, I think she's lost the bottle. The third time, I asked the parent to go outside and I asked the child. I said, dear, I'm a little concerned. Are you eating more than you should be? She said, no, I'm giving it to my plants. It's not, the plants are not growing so well and they need the medicine and they can't come here and they can't talk. And that's why I'm giving my medicine to them, you know. And I just felt so humbled by the amount of compassion that she felt for her plants at that time. And turns out she had given her father's medicine to the plants as well. So these are some of the behind the scenes, so to speak, that happen at the clinic. There's another anecdote with a young boy. Again, he's in university now, but uh, he was getting bullied at school, and as a result of that, he was having a lot of recurrent fevers. So while we were treating the fevers locally, it didn't solve the real problem and stress that he was going through. He was about 10 at that time. And one day we just sat down and we had a chat, and I explained to him that maybe the bully is so afraid somewhere else that he needs to make sure that he passes on the fear to someone else, and then he will feel less alone. And then we had a little longer chat than that. And in the week following that, this boy goes up to the principal of the school and says that I am being bullied. I'm not going to stand for it, but I want to help this boy, the bully, get better at his studies. And he began to go to that boy's house and help him to get better at studying, which is a huge deal in India
Yeah.
to do academically. And that means he found that courage within him to do this. This very person, he found the uh, really inspiring sense of strength to go and say, not only am I not going to stand for this, but I've decided to mentor this boy, which is a big deal. It's a
It's
really
huge.
big, yeah, yeah,
Usually most of the time they want to run from them or not be around them or like vacate the premises. So I love that he ended up putting his arm, like metaphorically, but like putting his arms around him and taking care of him and helping support
yeah.
him in those ways.
And that boy also began to change. He didn't remain the same. So the parents were involved. Everybody knew. The school counselor knew. All the usual routes had already been covered, and nothing was working. So I won't get into the history of the other boy, of course, but whatever be the reasons, this is how this young fellow kind of owned up to the strength that was already there. For a 10-year-old to have this wisdom is a big deal. And most 10-year-olds seem to have this type of wisdom because all the filters are not there that we have as adults. So these are the beauties behind the scenes, so to speak.
I love it. And I can definitely see how the work you're doing is making such an impact. A lot of our audience that listens to the podcast, they're entrepreneurs who are growing businesses and putting themselves out there in big ways, or they're executives of large organizations, and they are, learning to trust themselves and learning to trust their voice and put themselves out and, raise their hand in meetings and put themselves in bigger positions. I'm curious, when you think about like taking care of ourselves and putting ourselves in a position so that we can show up and be the people that we're meant to be in this world. What are some tips or tools that you would share for them specifically that might help engage them in not only taking care of themselves, but making sure they're taking care of like the people around them, their teams and their families as well?
I think that it's very important to look your fear straight in the eye. It doesn't have to happen all the time and every day because that's not practical. But if you're afraid of falling sick, then take charge of that. If you're afraid of speaking in public, start with 5 people. If you're afraid that something's going to go wrong with your children, join a group where there are parents where things have gone wrong with their children, so that we are not living in a bubble of imaginary fears, and all of us do. But it's important to take that step every time we find ourselves afraid of something. I think that is the biggest lesson that I have learned from my patients and from their siblings sometimes. Um, they they are very open, children. They can shift their perspective more easily than adults, and that's why I'm quoting them more than I'm quoting the adults. The adults have been fantastic as well. I would not be the same person that I am today without them.
Yeah. What are do you have them do any like specific exercises or like what are some like secret tools that you have in your toolbox if somebody is just having a rough, because I know a lot of the people I talk to, like they say they're burnt out or they're exhausted, or maybe those are buzzwords, maybe even in this moment. So we start to use those words ourselves, like, oh, I must be burnt out because I feel exhausted. I'm, coming home from work after a long day and I just want to curl up on the couch and binge watch TV. I don't actually want to engage with other people. What are some things that we can do when we're feeling that way?
So it's very important to be in touch with a physical health medical professional and or a mental health professional who can meet your wavelength, who can meet you where you are, right? So that part is extremely important. But apart from that, if we're talking about things that we can just do for ourselves, what I routinely ask the kids and the parents both to do is to write letters, to write a letter to a certain part of yourself that is not moving further, or a certain part of yourself that you are not happy with, right? So, for example, recently I wrote a letter to my own self from the punctual me to the not punctual me, because I don't like being late. And for some reasons, there was a day when I was late for an event. Of course, nobody had a problem with it, but I kept kind of going in a loop where I was reliving everything and thinking about how I could have made all the different changes to make sure that I could have been there on time. When actually I went there directly from the hospital. I was at the hospital, helping somebody there. So I wrote a letter for my own self to calm down and to get out of that loop and say, I'm writing from the punctual me to the unpunctual me, so that I can look at both sides from a distance.
Mm.
And this is a very simple exercise. You just need a pen and a paper, or a computer, if at all. But a pen and a paper is also enough. And you can just put down everything that you think, and you will be really surprised at how many friends and what a big support system we have inside of us,
Mm.
right? So, and then I wrote a letter back from the unpunctual me to the punctual me. And there was that second person, the second persona was completely relaxed and was completely, had things to say like, why did you even bother to go to the event? So I'm sure I would not have missed the event, but it was nice to hear it. And it's a very great exercise to do on a day-to-day basis. You can be very imaginative with it.
Yeah, I love that. It's definitely got a unique twist to it because I love to journal. And I go through waves of or seasons, maybe even where I journal, almost every morning for a while, and then I take a break from it, and then I come back to it when it feels like it's time to come back to it. But I usually am just writing down things I'm grateful for, or I'm writing just whatever's in my head to kind of get that story out. But I love the fact that you take it to a different level where not only are you writing to that part of you, but that person's writing back. So I think that's a great tip. It's definitely a unique one that I don't think I've heard in the past. So thank you for sharing that. I will try that because definitely there's you mentioned the loop going in your head when something
Yes.
happens. And I've never called it a loop, but I always say I'm making up stories to myself that there's no evidence of, there's no truth to, there's nothing really there. But for whatever reason, like I'll wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and it's circling in my head and I can't sleep until I feel like I can do something. And I think that would be a super helpful, useful tool to write
Yes.
to myself in that way.
So I'm not exactly sure where the origin of this technique is, right? I mean, I don't remember where it originally came from, but I've used it for myself now for over 20 years. And I've developed many prompts which are specific to the types of cases that I work with.
Mm.
So some of them have been compiled into this webinar, on-demand webinar. Usually the other webinars are in real time, but this makes it easier. And we want to make another level to it, which is letters to the future selves. But that is still to be produced properly, and to find the right platform and all of that. If you wish, I will be happy to share a link of one of the sessions of the first webinar, which is Letters to the Inner Child. And it's very fun because for each session, you have to watch one film. That's the homework. So
Okay.
we have to watch one film per session, which is from a different part of the country, and it highlights a different side of our inner self. And after watching that film, we have to follow the prompt that is being discussed and explained in the first half of the video. Then we write the letter. And then in the end, in the third part, I discuss three common themes which have turned up in groups when this prompt was given over the years.
Hmm.
So it pretty much covers a lot of really important issues and it helps us to identify them. It helps us to be okay with them and so on. So I will be happy to share a link from one of the latter episodes because the first few episodes go slow, because people are still onboarding and things like this. I can share the link to session 5 if you think it's
Yeah,
appropriate.
absolutely. I'm sure the audience and everybody who was listening would be like, yes, I want a piece of that. I want to learn how to talk to
Yeah.
that inner child and like reconnect in those ways. So thank you for
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Sure. Sure.
I
Sounds
appreciate you being here today. Before we wrap up, and we're going to do a couple rapid fire questions, is there any last minute thoughts you have for the community or anything that you'd like to share or last takeaways?
be yourself. That's it.
Yeah, I love it. Beautiful. All right, so we want to get to know you just a little bit better. And I'm curious, when you need to reset, reflect, and recharge, what's the first thing you like to do?
Done.
Dance?
Yes.
Yeah, I love that too.
Yeah.
Nothing's better than like a dance party in the kitchen.
No,
If
that's
I
true.
if I could buy you a plane ticket and you could go anywhere in the world today, where would you go and why?
Bali.
Bali?
Because it's really diverse. It has great wildlife and lots of art.
Mm, beautiful. And are you binge watching something on TV right now? Do you have a book on your nightstand? Like how do you, is there anything that you like to do at the end of the day to kind of unwind?
Yes, I'm reading. Oh, it's right there. I'm reading The Burgess Boys by Elizabeth Strout, who's one of my favorite authors, and she's done the characters beautifully. So, if there's anyone who is interested in longer books, yes. But if you're going for a shorter book, I would just say read the book A Very Late Story or The Dot. They are both fantastic.
Yes, we
There's
definitely.
also one more book. Sorry, I know this is rapid fire, but
Okay.
there's one more book called Perfectly Norman, Norman, Perfectly Norman, which is a play on words and is supposed to mean perfectly normal.
Yes.
So it's a beautiful book as well. Please go and read it. It's a children's book and I love it.
Definitely will check it out. And in theme of the podcast, which is called Attract and Stand Out, what does attract and stand out mean to you?
You have to let yourself shine just the way you are. Sometimes we are already shining and we don't know we are shining.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. It has been so fun to hear your story and get to know a little bit about you. I know you are giving us a couple of amazing gifts, which you've already talked about in today's episode. I will make sure that we get those links from you and that they're dropped in the show notes. So if you're listening and you want to grab them, definitely come check them out. But that's a wrap for another episode of the Attract and Stand Out podcast. As always, please hit subscribe. If you're new here, send us a message on Instagram or LinkedIn and let us know what your favorite takeaways are. And remember, I believe in you. You're allowed to stand out. You're allowed to shine. You're allowed to be you. We'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.